Trophies don't prove greatness. They often hide it. Think about it. A bench player with a medal outranking a star who carried a smaller club for years. Feels off, right? Let's talk about why the shiny stuff can blur the real picture. It sounds blasphemous. Cups glitter, medals shine, parades roll, but ask yourself this: if a player spends a decade carrying teams that never spend big, never buy a bench full of internationals, never get the lucky draw, and still bends games by sheer talent, did the empty trophy cabinet erase that greatness? Or have we been worshiping a golden lie? To see why the medal test fails in modern football, we have to rewind, then fast forward through how the game changed while our definition of success stayed stuck in the past. For most of football's history, silverware felt like clean math. Champions lift trophies. The best win the most. Simple. The newspapers wanted a tidy story. The museums wanted a neat display. And award nights needed a headline. So a shortcut took root. Count medals, crown heroes. It wasn't malicious, it was convenient. International tournaments were rare, leagues were local, and super teams weren't yet turbocharged by global money. In that world, trophies roughly mapped onto greatness. Roughly, but never perfectly. Even then, legends emerged without the right medals, and ring chasers rode benches to glory. The problem is that football evolved, money exploded, data sharpened, and the calendar turned brutal, while our public scoreboard stayed stuck on photo ops with ribbons. To see how the ground shifted under our feet, look at what a single elite player is asked to do today. Greatness now operates inside a complex machine. 11 parts, changing shape by the minute. You can be the best at your job and never touch the confetti. Deep midfielders erase threats before cameras notice. Fullbacks invert and become midfielders, setting tempo rather than whipping crosses. Press leaders sprint 40 yards, not to win the ball, but to force a clearance that becomes a throw, that becomes territory, that becomes pressure. Wingers pin fullbacks without receiving a pass, creating space for a teammate 3 lanes over. You won't find those actions engraved on a cup, but you can feel their weight in the way a team breathes. That's why scouts look beyond goals and assists. They ask, who tilts the field? Who carries a flawed system to competence? Who makes average teammates look good by solving problems early? If trophies still defined greatness, none of that would matter, yet it's exactly what separates elite from merely good. And if the engine is this complex, imagine how fragile the route to silverware has become. Knockout tournaments are coin flips with better packaging. One red card, one slip on a wet night, one offside toenail, one deflection off a defender's knee, and a season's narrative tilts. The best player on the planet can dominate a quarterfinal and still watch the other side celebrate because a backup keeper had the game of his life. League titles are fair, but even they depend on injuries, fixture congestion, and timing. Play your rival 3 days after a long away trip, and your legs are heavy. Draw a newly promoted team on a small pitch in a windstorm, and your game plan shrinks. Supporters remember the medals, insiders remember the margins. Trophies compress all that noise into a binary: did you win? The scoreboard never tells you that greatness did everything right while the coin landed wrong. And even when the coin lands right, there's a twist we don't like to admit.
The super team era concentrates silverware in a few postcodes. Rich clubs hoard depth. Third-choice players would start anywhere else. Sports science staffs rival hospitals. Analysts map opponents to the centimeter. When those machines roll, they crush leagues by February. Does that mean every medal on their wall proves individual greatness? Or does it prove resource advantage? Put an A- player in a juggernaut, and they gather trophies like fridge magnets. Put an A+ player in a rebuilding side, and they carry more weight than most champions ever feel. We've created a world where silverware often measures budget more than brilliance. And now that new leagues pump big money and big attention into the ecosystem, the picture blurs further. Different calendars, travel loads, climates, and tactical styles produce uneven comparisons. So if medals don't settle the argument, what does? Start with what travels. True greatness moves across contexts and keeps its edge. Different coaches, different formations, different teammates, and the player still bends games. Portability is a pillar. Consistency is another. Not one hot season, but a river of output that doesn't dry up when the weather changes. Then there's scalability. When pressure rises, does the same craft hold at higher speed? Some players run hot in mid-table games, but stall in elite traffic. Others look built for the fast lane. Add roll gravity. Do opponents tilt toward you, even when you're not on the ball? That invisible pull turns average teammates into match winners. Longevity matters, the ability to reinvent as the body changes. Versatility matters, the intelligence to play 2 or 3 roles at near elite level. And impact matters, in ways numbers struggle to catch. The captain who raises standards at training, the pro who teaches a gifted teenager how to live like one. Stack those pillars and you start to see a shape more honest than a cup silhouette. But can we make it practical for fans who want a simple debate? Imagine a greatness graph instead of a medal count. On one axis, peak, your best 24 months. On the other, duration, how long you held a world-class level. Then layer context, team strength adjusted for league difficulty and schedule stress. Add portability, performances after club or role changes. Finally, add clutch contribution. Not just goals in big games, but interventions that increase win probability when the margin is thin. The line-breaking pass before the assist, the recovery sprint that erases a counter, the late run that drags a center back 2 steps away from danger. This composite isn't perfect, but it's closer to reality than a shelf of metal. It lets you value the 10 who turned a contender into a champion without pretending the medal alone proves the case. It respects the winger who drew 2 markers all season so a teammate scored the headlines. It honors the 6 who aged into a quarterback, then into a coach on the field. And once you see this texture, you begin to notice how our wider culture keeps dragging us back to the shiny shortcut. Social feeds reward absolutes. Algorithms love tidy thumbnails. Greatest ever settled. Award shows roll out red carpets and give a single statue to a planet's worth of talent. Debate shows turn nuance into noise. It's easier to flash X trophies than explain roll gravity or schedule effects. So we confuse what's measurable for what matters. This isn't an anti-trophy speech. Cups are precious. Winning remains the point of sport. But trophies are outputs, not identities. They are team outcomes filtered through luck, money, health, and the invisible labor of dozens. The lie is pretending they're a clean mirror of individual greatness. If you want proof, swap jerseys in your mind. Put the same player, same season, into 3 different clubs. In one, they lift a cup. In the second, they reach a semi and fall on penalties. In the third, they rescue mid-table from disaster. Did their greatness change, or did the noise change the story? This shift matters because it changes how we scout, how we remember, and how young players see their future. If medals define greatness, a teenager from a small market may think the dream requires a move to the richest club as soon as possible. If impact defines greatness, a different path opens. Go where your growth accelerates, where your role expands, where your minutes are heavy with responsibility. Coaches start to value the player who knits teammates together even when the stat sheet is quiet. Clubs start recruiting not just for star power, but for system fit and leadership bandwidth. Fans begin to celebrate the action before the highlight. The sprint that prevented the clip we'll never see. When that culture takes root, the medal photo still means everything, but it no longer erases the 1,000 decisions that made it possible or the 1,000 acts of greatness that happened without the confetti cannon.
There's also a human piece we rarely discuss. Greatness costs. Seasons blur. Bodies ache. The schedule asks for 3 peak nights in 8 days and another long flight. The players who endure aren't just talented, they're disciplined in the boring ways. Sleep, diet, rehab, film. The trophy doesn't capture that grind, but the grind is the point, the professionalism that turns a gift into a career. When you evaluate greatness by medals, you hide that work behind a curtain and sell a shortcut. When you evaluate greatness by craft, adaptation, and impact, you show the path a young player can actually take. That reframes the role models we elevate. Not just the last score in the final, but the mid who ran himself empty in February to keep the title charge alive. Not just the face of the poster, but the voice in the dressing room who steadied a team after 2 bad weeks. So where does this leave the argument? Trophies still matter, they always will. But they're chapters, not the whole book. Judge a player by the total story. Peak, duration, portability, role gravity, leadership, and how much better everyone around them became. When new talent emerges, and it always does, resist the shortcut. Ask the harder questions. Does this player travel? Do they make a coach's plan scalable? Do they draw 2 defenders just by standing in a channel? Do they survive the calendar without fading? Can they move up a level and still look like themselves? If the answer is yes across time and context, you're looking at greatness, even if the museum curator runs out of shelf space for someone else first.
Here's the simplest way to remember it. Trophies are the fireworks. Greatness is the fire. Fireworks light the sky for a moment and make the night feel magical. The fire keeps you warm long after the noise fades. We've spent years staring at the sky and counting bursts. It's time to pay attention to the heat that lasts, the craft that scales, the leadership that travels, the intelligence that outlives pace, the professionalism that turns potential into proof. Cups will keep deciding seasons. Medals will keep defining careers on paper. But the golden lie is thinking they tell the whole truth. The real story lives in the 90 minutes, repeated 1,000 times, where a player makes hard things look simple and lifts 11 into something larger than themselves. That's greatness, shiny or not. Trophies are awesome, keep them. But greatness is bigger. Does your game travel, scale, and last? Different coaches, new roles, tough months. Still you. That's the stuff. Did I nail it or miss it? Tell me your 3 signs of greatness that don't fit in a trophy case. I'll feature the best replies in the next video.